Welcome to Banquet Breakdown.
I'm Jack.
I'm Sarah.
And we break down fictional relationships so you don't have to.
Welcome back to Banquet Breakdown. Here we go, part 2.
Yeah, Gilmore Girls.
What are we talking about?
1, part 2. We're going to be talking about the family dynamics, non-romantic relationships of season 1. And if you tuned in last week, you would have heard us talk about the romantic relationships of season 1, which you should go listen to it if you haven't, because it was really good. And of course, it all kind of ties in, but yeah, this time we're going to be focusing on the non-romantic relationships.
And if you did listen to it again, or listen to it already, just go back and listen again, because it was a good episode.
Yeah. If we do say so ourselves.
We have lots to say. Yeah. So we have Hannah back again with us, and but before we get going, what's the sip today? Jack, how about we start with you?
Sure. I do not have a mug again. Sorry, everybody. I have a plain old glass. At least it's kind of cute. And I'm drinking ginger ale this time. Nice. Because it's sweltering in Sarah's house right now. I was like, I cannot do another warm drink. I need a cold drink. So, ginger ale it is.
It is. I was like, I'm boiling right now. So, yeah. Hannah, what's your sip today?
I have ginger ale as well.
A double sip.
And I need to really hydrate. So I also have water.
Wow. So, where's your water from this time?
I don't even have anything to say. Just the tap. Just plain old tap. I like to keep it humble sometimes. So yeah. Nothing too expensive.
Oh man, you could have said like France or Hawaii or like, you know, some kind of...
I also don't like... I like to gatekeep, so this is from the tap.
Yeah. Sarah, what's your sip?
Okay, my sip is a blueberry pomegranate bubbly.
Yeah. I like bubblies.
I do really like bubblies. Yeah. Bubblies are kind of like the thing in Medicine Hat. Like, I feel like nowhere else do people like bubblies, but a lot of the friends that I have around here, bubblies all the time.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I did actually notice after we moved here that bubblies are more expensive here than they were, and I wonder if that's because they're bought more
because
frequently.
They're popular. Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I don't know what it is, but anytime that I'm visiting people in other cities or whatever, bubbly is never an option. Yeah. And here, every single house that you go to, guaranteed, there's at least one bubbly flavor.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Anyways, I like my bubbly.
Where do we want to start off today?
Man.
We could talk about.
There's so many things to talk about. And I think we did kind of dive into some things that maybe we'll go into deeper into this episode, because we talked about a few different things. Hannah, you're the guest here. What is like the thing that you are so excited to talk about for this episode of the non-romantic relationships?
Gosh. Okay.
What is like you're so ready. You're ready to start.
Yeah. Honestly, there's so many though. That's the issue. I'm so passionate about so many.
Yes.
But I think the most obvious one would be like Lorelai and her parents. That's such a big one. Yeah. But then again, you also have like Rory and Lane and Rory and Lorelai. Yeah. But I do think the one that is probably the biggest conversation one would be Lorelai and her parents. Yeah. And just that whole dynamic.
Well, and I wonder if it might be worth just giving a quick kind of overview on what the dynamic is like between the family members, because it is very unique in some ways.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, would you mind kind of just going over
Yeah, I guess when we meet the Gilmores in episode 1, we see Lorelai and Rory first, and we don't know anything about extended family until Lorelai has to ask her parents for money to help pay for Rory's tuition to go to this fancy private school. And right away then that cues off a lot of details of she hasn't seen her parents very often. Rory mentions that, they only see each other for holidays, special occasions. Yeah. And that they're living in a different city or like a different suburb, I guess. It's kind of hard to describe. And then with this deal comes Friday night dinners. So her parents agree to give her money and to pay for Rory's tuition, but they have to show up every Friday, 7:00 on the dot for Friday night dinners. And that stays throughout the show. Like that is the premise of the show. Yeah. And through that, you get to see some dynamics, but you also learn that Lorelai had Rory when she was 16 years old, and she basically ran away or moved away from home and kind of disconnected herself from that lifestyle, from a very prestigious, social, upper social class type of life. And so now being brought back into this family dynamic with the dinners and stuff like that, you're slowly getting to know what's happened over the years and the family that Lorelai grew up in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the family she has chosen to leave behind until now.
Yes.
And it's interesting, too, because the show picks up when Lorelai is 32 and Rory is 16, or just turning 16. And that's an interesting dynamic as well, because that's the age Lorelai was when she left home, essentially. So yeah, there's lots to unpack here.
So many things.
Even just within the family, but then all of them because Lorelai settles in a town called Stars Hollow and makes these like really great connections in this place. She ends up working at an inn, and she has some really great friends there, like Sookie and Michelle, and then Rory has Lane, and there's lots of other friendships too that are really vital throughout the whole series, but especially in season 1.
So there's so many things. I think diving into the family relationships, like with the parents. I think something that I was noticing right away is, and we've talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but Lorelai, you can just tell, like, she just tries so hard to do the opposite of what she was raised in. And moving to a small town, even like how they live, their house, how it's decorated and everything, like it is the complete opposite to what she grew up in. And I think that's kind of a motivation that she has behind everything that she does. I want to do something different than what my parents did and how I was raised. And that's, when you're trying that hard to do something or to not do something, you often end up doing things similar or like causing similar behaviors or whatever. So it's like, I see that a lot represented in different shows and even in real life. People are trying to run away from something. They end up facing it. So I think that's kind of what stands out to me.
Yeah. And going off of that too. So one of the interesting things about the show is that Rory doesn't have a relationship with her grandparents until these Friday night dinners start happening. And then Rory starts to develop a relationship with them. And she gets especially close to Richard, her grandfather, because they have a lot in common. They have similar interests. And so they have lots of these really like cute moments together, honestly. Like he takes her golfing and it's kind of awkward because they don't know each other that well. But they get to know each other and it's really cute and really sweet. But then they're forming this relationship and Lorelai sees it and I think she gets jealous. Because she's been so protective over her relationship with Rory that all of a sudden her parents are getting involved and I think she feels jealous. What do you guys think?
I would totally agree. Like I think she feels like, why couldn't I have had that relationship with them? Like why couldn't there have been those moments where I'm connecting, like where she's connecting with her dad? And I think that's kind of her thought process as she's seeing Rory connect with her grandparents and enjoy connecting. Of like, oh, like I wanted that and why couldn't I have that?
So your perspective is that like she wanted that connection and she's jealous because of that?
Yeah, and I think that with that also comes the opposite, where she has built up this animosity towards them for so long that she wants to keep that going, because even in the episode where Rory does face issues with her grandparents and bringing over Dean, and Lorelai immediately is like, there's a high possibility it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with me and everything. And like, it probably did stem from Rory's bringing over Dean, who doesn't really have a plan, which is like, because Rory was the same age as Lorelai, like they're kind of scared. But also it was almost like rewatching that scene, it's like she wants to keep this distance between them. And like she couldn't just be there for Rory in that moment and be like, you know what, I know it's hard, I've been there, but it was like immediately it has everything to do with me, and they just hate that they see that in you, like you this perfect, the daughter they always wanted, and they have me, which I think definitely put a lot of pressure on Rory as well.
Yeah.
To kind of, in her relationship with the grandparents, to be like, they do want me to be this perfect, but I think she just always wanted it to seem very, they just don't approve of me, they don't love me in that kind of way. And so I think it was both ends. She wanted them to she wanted to have that relationship with them, but she was also trying to keep some distance from them because it fits her idea of what it was like growing up with them. So
well, and it's easier if they're not in the picture, it's easier for Lorelai to be able to kind of make these comments of they do this and they do that.
She blames them for a lot of things. She blames them, Even some of her own poor choices. Exactly. She blames them for. It's an easy scapegoat. It's like, oh, well, my relationship with my parents sucks, so I'm going to blame everything on it, right?
Right. But I do also wonder, like, in addition to that, do you think that they were as hard on her as she says they were growing up? Because we don't see that. And also, when a grandchild is brought into the picture, it does tend to soften grandparents. And so no matter what, like when Rory's around, we see how differently they treat her. Yeah. But also it's like, because Emily's always saying like, oh, we're the worst, or like we were always this, and she's kind of like, you always say that we're acting so awful towards you. But like, she was 16 when she left home. And so she was 16. Like there had been enough stuff that had happened for her to get in this position of like, I want to leave. I can't keep going through this. So do you think that they were genuinely that hard on her and intense on her, but we just don't see it because Rory's around?
I don't think that they were. I think it actually has more to do about her becoming pregnant. Like, and just how that made her family, like, in that time and also in that social status to be pregnant at that age, that was a no-no. And so I think part of what we've talked about already with Lorelai's character is she is very self-centered and she can't think about the future aspects of things. And so I think even as like a teenager, I would like to say actually that she had a pretty good life, that I think that everything. She was
very privileged.
She was very privileged, and even though she was maybe different and liked different things, she was a teenager, right? But I don't think there was anything in her life that was actually bad that would have made her run away. I think it was actually just her parents' response to her being pregnant. And that whole issue then with Christopher, like that adds things.
They wanted them to marry each other. And that was where she was like, no.
She's like, no. And then I think she just kept seeing all of these expectations put on her. And then she was just like, I need to get out of here, which is very Lorelai. Like when she gets overwhelmed, when she feels like, even in relationships, when she feels like somebody is putting these expectations on her, she has to get out. She has to run away.
Well, and this is what I was going to say, is that I actually think it's really influenced on the personality differences between Emily and Lorelai. And I think there's this distinct, and I think this actually happens in real life too, where I think moms and daughters are kind of pitted against each other a little bit. And I think that's actually a societal thing. I don't even think it's necessarily always just that moms and daughters can't get along. Like, there's actually things in place in society that cause moms and daughters to have this tension. But I think for them, they had these such different outlooks on life and such different personalities that I think for Lorelai, after getting pregnant, like her parents were like, obviously you guys need to get married. This is the natural next step, right? And I think for her, she just fought against everything she was told to do, right? That was just kind of innate to her personality, is like being defiant, I think. Right. But I also wonder if for her, she saw the chaos that was ensuing because of this, and she went, it's easier if I remove myself. For everyone, it's going to be easier for me to just get out of here. And I think it was a selfish decision. I don't know if it was the wrong decision per se, but it could have been a lot different. Her relationship with her parents could have been a lot different had she not just...
Right. And I do fully agree, like, that being the reason why, like, she had left. I just, like, always think about what it would have been like for her growing up in that, like, even before she got pregnant, because basically I just think that what we see in future episodes with like, this is kind of jumping ahead, but when Rory was kind of living with them for a while, there were closer to the end of that era, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Era in her life. You kind of see them, like, talking to her like she's their daughter, because I think they do mention, like, something about that. And you kind of get a glimpse of, like, we don't necessarily see them talking to Lorelai like that. And I do wonder if that's because they now have a grandchild, and so they've softened up a little bit, because growing up in that environment, she rebelled so hard, but what is she rebelling against?
Right.
Like, she's very free, which is very opposite to them being very firm on her. And I think, this is what I was going to say. We don't see Emily and Richard being affectionate in front of the girls. And so because of all the stuff that, you know, Emily had to be the perfect wife, I think having a daughter like Lorelai, where it's very freeing, you know, growing up like that, she tried to be more firm on her in order to reel it back in for herself. Which I do think we kind of see a little bit, but I think it's hard for us to be like, oh yeah, Emily and Richard are 100% the bad guy, because we don't necessarily see that. We see a lot of Lorelai's perspective on it.
Right.
But you're kind of like, are they that bad though? But I do think it's because Rory's around, so they're not as... That's just kind of my thought on it, because I do see them being intense on her, but not enough for it to kind of make sense, unless they had been worse on her growing up.
I wonder if it's a blend of both things. I really think that for her to feel like running away was the only option, she would have probably had moments in her life where her parents were too hard on her, right? And even just the pressures from her parents with the lifestyle that they had, like, that would have been intense, right? And I think for her kind of free spirit personality, I think really what happened is, like, they maybe a weird analogy, but they were like two mountain goats just, like, butting heads, right? And no matter how many times they charged at one another, neither of them would give up, right? And so I think there was this tension where they couldn't relate to each other. And I think that's where Rory makes the difference, because Rory's a bit of a mix of the two personalities. And so I think Rory has this, she brings out that softer side in Emily and Richard. And she also helps Lorelai kind of rein it in a bit, right? And so I wonder if that's why this dynamic changes so much once everyone's brought together, because Lorelai and Emily kind of have to face up to some of their differences, right? And I think they just butted heads. And yes, Emily was probably too hard on her at certain points, but Lorelai also probably just didn't want to listen either. Right. So I think it's a mix of all of those things, right?
Well, and also, to be fair, like, Lorelai being 16 when she left and started this new life, all of her memories and feelings towards her parents were in her younger years. And because she's still in that mindset, I'm sure through the years she's played it back being more intense as it was. Because as a kid, you're always like, oh, my parents never let me do... Like, you're more hard on your parents, whereas when you get older, you can see it better from the perspective. But because she left and she started this new life, she never really grew up being able to see their side of things, because she's so stuck in this, you know,
very like self-centered mindset.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of times too where you see that Emily knows how to push Lorelai's buttons.
Totally.
And you can...
And vice versa.
Yes. And you can see that Emily is just like, she knows exactly... If she doesn't back down, or if she doesn't, like, take back what she said or whatever, like, that bugs Lorelai. And then, like, Lorelai knows exactly what to say to bug her mother. And so they're just, like, constantly
charging at each other.
And I think there's this part of them that kind of likes that. Like, they get...
I think it's easier to blame each other then.
It is,
like, then the other person blows up and they're like, look at this. Like, they're doing this.
Right? But it's like little kids. Like, you see that in siblings, right? Where they're just like, they did that. But what did you say to provoke that, right?
Yes.
Like,
they provoke each other. That's a good word. Because they really do. Poke the bear every time.
Every single time. And, like, those Friday night dinners, oh my goodness. it's basically just like to be a fly on the wall in all of them, right? Like,
I think they give us little snippets.
they give us
not enough.
Not enough, because you can just tell, like, they're sometimes so awkward because of what's going on, or like, Emily just doesn't love to have conversations, but yet she always insists that they come.
And I love, there's one episode in season 1 where they had been talking about how much they liked pudding, and Emily would have never served pudding, and then at the Friday night dinner, pudding is served as a dessert, and this is like Lorelai all of a sudden goes like, she served pudding, like, my mom is changing, she's hearing us, she's doing all this. And then later in the episode they have this blow up, and she's like, well, I guess the pudding meant nothing. And it's so funny because it's like this just back and forth where Emily's trying to incorporate these things, and right, and then they blow up and they just go like, everything's out the window and we're starting from square one again. I feel like that's their relationship. It's just never finding a footing. They always just blow each other up.
And I do feel bad for Emily, because whenever Lorelai talks about her childhood, and she always says, like, her dad was never really there. He was always in and out of the house, like, traveling here, traveling there, which, like, definitely affects her relationship with men as well, because she never really had her dad there. But also it kind of put Emily in this position of, like, she has to be the perfect wife, the perfect mom. And she's doing it on her own because her husband's not really in the picture. And even when he is there, he's very dismissive of Emily's feelings for the most part. Like, he's kind of like mocking her in a way of like, oh, you do the parties and then this and that, and like not really seeing what she does. But also that's kind of what society is set up for them, is that the wife has to take care of that.
Especially the environment that they live in, right? Like,
it's just expected that the wife does all this stuff, and then the men get credit
and
for
he
everything.
doesn't appreciate any of it.
And I actually, watching back, I was a little bit shocked because I forgot how distant Richard is in the beginning. And
very.
a lot of it has to do with his job, which you find out towards the end of season 1. I think maybe a little bit beginning of season 2, but like a lot of it has to do with his job, but you don't even know what's going on with his job. But you just see that he's like so distant, and he's really not traveling present, and he just gets angry at all these things for no reason or whatever. Like, but he never is really interacting with Rory and Lorelai, like a little bit, but not compared to other seasons. And I forgot that you know, that he's so distant, but I wonder if that is more so what he would have been like even when Lorelai was younger. And maybe it is just that it's this job and that environment and like the club and the guys, you know, like that environment that causes him to be that way. And I think he does show a lot of growth as the seasons go on. But
well, even if, like, because they, like we mentioned before, they only really saw them at holidays. But if he was a present father for Lorelai, I think he would have been less awkward with Rory, because he's like, I had a daughter too. But the way that he acts with Rory is like,
I've never interacted with
kind of like if he met a baby, he'd hold it up by the ankle. Like, it's kind of like, what do I do?
Like, so I think one sentence he's just like, what do I talk about with her? Like,
she'd rather go to the mall and do all this. And it's kind of like, didn't you have a daughter? But he just was not present. Like, even later on when she says they were playing hide and seek, this was like seasons later, and he like forgot about her. And like left, and it's kind of like, what? Like, I can't, like, that just, it does make a lot of sense for Emily to be the way that she is, because she's trying so hard to be mom and dad for Lorelai, because a lot of the conversations she's had with Lorelai could have been coming from the dad too. And I think that Lorelai showed a softer side towards the dad because she didn't really see him as much. She doesn't have as many bad memories because of it was mom dealing with everything.
And this is where I think society places, this is kind of what I mean by this, where they place moms and daughters against each other, because moms end up being the caretakers, right? And daughters are kind of raised to then be the caretakers in certain, especially like back then or in different wealth classes, right? Like, there's these expectations, and I think that it's just, it's not conducive to healthy relationships between moms and daughters, and maybe just moms and kids in general, because there's this distant father who's around sometimes, and maybe there's these like positive moments that they're getting with the daughter, even though they're few and far between, but the moms are there for all of it. They're there every day. They're the ones like in the thick of it. And then there's this kid that you have who's just like hating everything you do, even though like all you're doing is trying to care for the kid,
and
right?
Also, like Emily, like moms in that kind of setting, and Emily in particular, she was responsible for setting them up to go to all of the social events.
Yes.
And like she actually makes a comment about that later on in the season, where she's just like Richard's telling her like, no, we can't go to that, and no, we can't go to that, and you can tell that that's like flustering her a little bit because she's not used to that. And I think that in that time, but also with that social class, like we're saying, that Emily was expected to make sure that the family was known and like out in society. And I think then to have somebody like Lorelai as a daughter who is very free-spirited and will say whatever she wants and likes all of these things,
lifestyle, and I don't want to be here.
And then she's like Emily's trying to present the family to society as like,
because it reflects on them.
Yep.
As well.
Right? It's a very like honor shame, which
Yes.
is very different, like speaking from a cultural perspective. We are not an honor shame society. Like that is more from very warm cultures. Like so, but in the United States, which is where this is set in, and like in North America, we are more independent. But in that society, it is very much like if your kid does something, it reflects badly on your family name. And then your family name can be destroyed. Which is why then Lorelai getting pregnant, like that, they're trying to protect how they are in society. And I think that's why her parents react in certain ways. So it's like they, like Lorelai has this whole like, this thing and this vendetta in some ways of against her parents, but really like what could they do? They were in this society. They were raised in this society. It was what they were taught to do.
It's giving Bridgerton.
Yes, it is. It really is. Well, that area of the United States, that like it's still in some ways is like that.
The coming out ceremonies and all those things. There are like reflections of the Regency era definitely woven in there, but it's so interesting.
Which is why I think it's so frustrating that Lorelai has all the time in the world to think about how her parents affected her growing up, but like if she were to just sit down and like think, because she knows that Emily and her mother-in-law don't get along, like her and Trix, they do not get along, and because Richard is such a mama's boy, and because men are placed so much higher than women, it's like you have Emily who's trying to be the perfect wife for Richard, and then his mom just hates Emily, and he loves her so much, so there was so much pressure on Emily. So to even, like, sit down and be like, I can see my mom, how she grew up, like, how her, you know, meeting Richard and the pressure that she got right from the beginning, like, the very start of the relationship, how much that would have affected Emily to then how it affected Lorelai. But she just doesn't, like, she only wants to think about how they did her so wrong, but not why. Like, what has happened in their life. Because she can talk about, oh, I had a million dresses and these coming out parties, and it's like, so did Emily, though. And very so often do we hear Richard making comments about how Emily was, like, not a wild child, but he says something about her, like, before, and it's kind of like, so you know that she was, you know, kind of a fun girl, you know. So then, but that's where it's kind of frustrating, because there's always a reason there. It always kind of falls down, like, I don't know.
Lorelai, again, like we talked about in the last episode, she's just so selfish and so self-centered that she can't have that perspective of her parents. And I think that every situation that ends up happening, like all of the miscommunications, all of the things, Lorelai has this expectation too, as well. Like, I think she kind of goes into these dinners and into certain conversations with like an expectation of how she wants her parents to react, but then they never do. And so it's like they're never meeting her expectations, but then she's setting herself up for disappointment. Like, and that's like, she kind of does it to herself. And I'm just like, she does that with her relationship with Rory too, which we can come back to. But that's, I just see her always setting herself up for disappointment because she has these expectations. And it never goes that way.
Well, and her parenting style is not far off from Emily and Richard's.
In some ways, yeah.
Like, she's definitely more free-spirited, but you can tell in certain things, like the whole Harvard thing, she's almost trying to prevent Rory from going back into this, like, to where she was, but pushing her in the same direction that her parents were pushing her in. Because she doesn't want Rory to end up like her. But she also,
Rory didn't have to go to Chilton.
Exactly. No. Can we please talk about this now? While we're here. Yes.
I just wanted to say one more thing with, like, Emily and Richard, though. Yes. I feel like, honestly, so many people watch Gilmore Girls and hate Emily. And I even had that experience the first time I watched it, where I was like, she's awful. And then the more I've watched it, the more respect I have for her. And the pressures that she had. And it doesn't always excuse how they treat Lorelai. Because there's definitely some things there. But at the same time, from the culture she was raised in, like, she was just trying to do right by Lorelai. She was not trying to be an awful mother. I think Lorelai's selfishness gets in the way so much of them having a good relationship, because Emily is just sitting there like, all I want is for us to get along, and I'm doing these things out of care and love for you, but it's like they speak two different languages. Like, it's just, it was never going to work, right? The way that Lorelai receives and gives love is not the way that Emily receives and gives love, and I think they just miss each other in every attempt to reconcile. There's just always something
and I think if there wasn't that societal pressure on Emily, she could be the exact same person, and they could have had such a good relationship.
And I wonder if they would have outside of that societal.
I think so, because you can tell when Emily's talking to Richard, or just when you're watching it and you get to see the way that she does certain things, even though it can come across as, like, very passive aggressive towards Lorelai, you know that she's doing it because she wants to be close. She doesn't want her to take the money from Trix because she doesn't want to lose Lorelai. But she covers it up with this because you're not supposed to show those kind of emotions. And so I really do think that they could have had a really great relationship without that.
If there wasn't that pressure. I will say, as much as we've been harping on Lorelai a bit, there are some moments, but Lorelai would never do this in front of Emily. But there's moments where it's just her and Rory, and she does explain a little bit, and she does want Rory to have a relationship with her grandparents. And so I think, like, as much as sometimes her jealousy gets in the way of how they're treating Rory versus her, like, that definitely shows up. But there are some moments where Lorelai is like, okay, have this good relationship. I want you to have a good relationship.
And I'm going to let you step outside of this that we've built together and actually have an opportunity to make that relationship.
Exactly. And that, like, I do have to give her, like, growth props for that. Because you do see that she is trying to let Rory go a little bit and into that world.
I think it's just her own, like, feelings and, like, insecurities of how she grew up that's kind of, like, preventing her in some ways to feel 100% happy, because like we said, when Rory gets close with Richard, she's kind of like, she gets mad at Rory in a way, because she's like, I want that with my family, which is, like, not to blame. Like, you know, she could have been like, yep, you have relationships, like, they were awful to me, like, but you can see that she just wanted that relationship with them, and she does come back and kind of apologize, and so you can't really blame her because she grew up feeling a certain way. And like we said before, it's kind of like at 16, she's stuck in the past. And so she's almost battling this, like, the feelings that she had when she was 16, but also she is an adult, so she has matured in certain areas to be, like, have this relationship, and she's just trying to not stay caught in the past. I think it's just hard for her to break that in some ways, but
I think one issue that comes up with all of those dynamics, though, is that Rory, as much as Rory is selfish and follows her mom in some of her relationships, with her family, Rory is kind of a people pleaser. And she is always wanting to be the good girl and to please her parents, both her dad, her mom, and all of the grandparents. And so in this, Rory's, like, caught in the middle, because then
you can't
her mom is you can't please both of them. And her mom is, like, telling her these things of, you know, blah blah blah, my parents, blah blah blah, but then okay, yes, go have a relationship with them. But then Rory's kind of like, like, what do I do, right?
Yes.
So, like, unfortunately, because of Rory's personality in that, like, she can't help the situation either. She just kind of makes it worse because she's trying to please both sides.
Yeah. And actually, that was something I was going to ask with, like, and this might be an obvious answer, but do you think that Lorelai relied too much on Rory emotionally?
100%.
Like, way more, like, an inappropriate level for being a daughter. Like, extreme.
Rory was her best friend.
Yes.
And her first best friend. And I think she treated having Rory as like, oh, this person is going to like me.
They're tied to me.
They're tied to me. They're going to like all of those things. And whether she consciously knew that or just did it subconsciously because of how things happened, I think that, she relies on Rory to keep her afloat.
Well, and I think too, Lorelai and Rory's relationship, we said this in the last episode, feels more like sisters sometimes. And I think that's probably a more common dynamic in a sister relationship where it's like, oh, we can relate on these things. So I'm going to tell you about all of these things in my life that maybe isn't appropriate for a mom to be telling her daughter all the time, right?
Yeah.
Especially with some of those dynamics with the grandparents, like you said, like what was Rory supposed to do in that situation where Lorelai was saying all of these things like, oh, my parents this, my parents this, and then being like, oh, go have a relationship with them. Like that put Rory in such an uncomfortable place.
Yeah, but also she didn't push Rory to have a relationship until they were paying for Chilton.
Exactly.
Because 16 years of just seeing them on holidays, it's kind of like, yes, good for you for growing and wanting her to, because she could have kept the distance, but she was not trying to. She really was reluctant to even go to them first, because Sookie was mentioning it, and she's like, don't say it. But it's like, she wasn't pushing for that until they were doing something for her. And there is growth in that because... Again, like I said, she could have still kept their distance and just done the Fridays, but like that's still hard for Rory to kind of be forced into this relationship where it's like, you spent the first 16 years of my life dogging on my grandparents, and then it's like, but you should go have a relationship with them, and it's like she's really stuck in the middle of it's hard.
Yeah, she is. And I think this, I want to loop back around because this kind of ties in because of Lorelai and her parenting style with Rory. How much do you guys think that Lorelai is like guiding Rory's life? So like, yes, Rory is, I agree that she is that like, you know, safe place for Lorelai and whatever, but do you think that Lorelai is guiding or forcing or pressuring Rory's life to be in a certain way, or no?
I think I would say yes, but I think it might partially be a product of just the fact that they were so close and that they really only had each other for a long time. Because one thing that I thought about while watching season 1 was just how much Rory mirrors Lorelai's behavior in so many different aspects of her life that I'm not even sure if season 1 Rory would be consciously aware of the fact that she's just like being dragged along by Lorelai. And I feel like Lorelai would think that it's cohesive is not the word, but like they're collaborating on these ideas, right? Whereas I think it is really Lorelai kind of pushing for these things, but I think Rory being a people pleaser and being someone who does have this, like, I don't know, she kind of idolizes Lorelai in a lot of ways, right? So she's looking up to her being like, I'm just going to do all these things because this is what she's doing. And I want to just kind of like follow where she leads.
Where you lead. I will follow anywhere. Okay, that theme song, my family, so when my mom and I would watch the show all the time, and then eventually my dad, he would be looped in, and we would never skip through the intro song, and you can't, you have to sing it. And so then my dad, like my mom would be like, where you lead, and then my dad would be like, I will follow, like just like singing from different levels of the house. Anyways, sorry, side note. But I think that, okay, so even with the Chilton thing, very first episode, they're like, Lorelai gets the letter, you're going to Chilton. And then, we talked about this a little briefly in the last episode, but then Rory is saying, no, I don't want to go to Chilton.
Yeah.
And Lorelai's like, wait a second, where's this coming from?
Yeah.
And she gets like, she kind of blows up.
Yeah.
And you like see this huge reaction and you're like, what the heck? And I think at first when you're watching that, you're just like, well, yeah, like this is kind of ridiculous. Like, why is she making that decision because of a boy? But for me, when I was watching it this last time, I was kind of like, okay, how much did Rory actually want to go to Chilton and actually want to go to Harvard?
Yeah.
Was it just that this has been the plan and Lorelai has dreamed of this because this will get her a future, you know, and a future maybe that Lorelai wanted to have but couldn't because she ran away. But like, how much of it is Rory, like Rory grew up in that town. She grew up going to that school. She has friends there, and now she's going to this other school. Like, how much does Rory really want to go to Chilton? I don't even, like, not even Dean being in the picture. Like, because she flipped the switch so quickly about not wanting to go to Chilton, that's what made me wonder, is it maybe not just the guy aspect, but just the school in general? What are your thoughts on that?
That kind of sparks this thought in my mind where I'm wondering, you know, because there's certain points of the show where Lorelai really hates on her parents for like trying to make Rory the daughter they never had. But Lorelai does that as well.
Yes.
Like Lorelai sets up Rory's life to be the life she didn't have.
Yes.
And so she hates on Emily and Richard for kind of giving in to some of Rory's desires later on because she ends up wanting to live with them and live apart from Lorelai for a while and stuff. And Lorelai's like, how could you let her do this? Like, you just want her to replace like me as your daughter. This is the daughter you wanted. But Lorelai set her on that path.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like, why would she have the Harvard, you know, merch and stuff in her room? Like, like who, I don't know any kid, even, like, I've worked with kids that then are overseas. They're trying to go to Ivy League schools. And yes, you have these different schools in mind, but you're just trying to go to one. Like, you're just, you're trying to get into any of them.
It's not like your heart's set on one specific one and that's it.
Yeah. And so I think, like, yes, you know, I don't know. I think it's just interesting that, like, why did Lorelai have her heart set on, like, it felt like she had her heart set on Rory going to Harvard specifically.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like it comes just from Rory.
Yeah.
No.
Do you think that they picked Harvard because her dad went to Yale?
Yes.
And it's very, like, opposite? Because it's,
I think that Lorelai, because she's 16. So 16 is like, you're prepping for college. You are prepping. You got to get your grades in. All of those things.
Especially if you want to go to an Ivy League school.
Yes, especially if you're wanting to go to an Ivy League. And so I think that Lorelai had this plan to go to Harvard in spite of her dad.
To rub it in.
Just to rub it in. And I think that was her plan. And then she got pregnant. And so then I think she was like, I can't do that. I'll just have a... I'll you know, kind of force... Oh, I don't know if she specifically, like, said or consciously made that choice. I think it was just...
I just think it's her stuck in her 16-year-old mind of, like, this is what she grew up with. She had barely any contact with her parents, so any thoughts that she had towards them was her 16-year-old thoughts just getting worse and worse because it's in her head. Yeah. But I also think that, like, she was so much like her parents... where, like, forcing Rory to do things. Yeah. Because even when, like, Rory with the dance, and Rory's like, I'm not going. And then you see so many times where Lorelai's like, I just don't want you to feel like you can't because I don't want to. Why would Rory feel that way if you weren't already telling her in the past, like, you won't like dances because of this and this and this. Yeah. You won't like wearing these dresses because of this and this and this. Yeah. And, like, even when her and Rory get into that argument... at the wedding with the, like, twin sisters, and I think that was when Rory was close with the dad, and they pan over to the little girl who's being yelled at by her mom, and Rory's like, oh, and Lorelai's like, I must have had 1,000 of those dresses, and, like, Rory's like, thanks for not making me, like, she's making Rory... like, look at that situation to be like, that's what it would be like. If you were to grow up in this setting, it is torture. But then you see in the future, like, Rory does like those things. Yeah. It's just she's always been attributing those to bad things happening. Like, this, it's so strict, it's so this and that, and it's like, so now she's forced to be so free-spirited, so emotionally unavailable, because that's just whimsy. It's like freeing, it's the best, and Lorelai's my best friend, and you know, that's how life should be, instead of like, you have a lot of choices. It's not just, your choice doesn't have to be whatever you want it to be. It can be, you can go and have fun, or if you really want to, you know, do this coming out party, if you do really like that part of your life, do that. Like, those should be your choices. It shouldn't be you have to be so it's whimsy.
It's interesting though too that like there's no middle ground option. Like because to me, like, even like small town Stars Hollow versus Ivy League social status, like those are two very extremes. Most people are in the middle, where it's like, okay, even just aim to go to like a bigger city. Like she could have just aimed to go to New York and become a journalist, like because she always wanted to be a journalist or whatever. Like
you didn't have to go
she
to an
didn't
Ivy
have
League
to go
school
to an Ivy League school. Yeah, exactly. Like, why was there no middle ground talk? Because it just kind of seemed like it was like, again, complete opposite. Try to go for the complete opposite.
Yeah, but I also think, as much as Lorelai in her mind was thinking this is the complete opposite, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
It was like, I'm fighting against what the opposite would have been for my parents. Yeah. But I'm still pushing my daughter down the same path that I was down, right? And like I said before, she didn't have to go to Chilton. No. Rory didn't have to go to Chilton to achieve her goals, right? No. So that was definitely something that Lorelai was influencing. And even, you know, Rory's attitude about all these different things, like even when Emily tries to get her more involved and having the like coming out party and all this stuff, like, Rory's really hesitant about it, even though I think she probably did want to do it. But Lorelai, her whole life, had been talking so negatively about all this stuff and this lifestyle. And so how do you fight back on years of just negative input about these different things, right?
Yeah, and I do think that, like, with Rory at Chilton, and I don't want to say that, like, she should have been pulled out of Chilton when the stuff with Tristan and Paris and all that stuff happened. But, like, I feel like if my daughter was at a school so far away from her home and her family and friends, even though it was only 30 minutes, like, you don't know anyone there. And then she's starting, and she's kind of falling a little bit behind. And, you know, Paris is kind of really on her and all of her friends. And then this boy is, like, really just on her in this uncomfortable way. And I know Rory didn't really mention it that much, but there are also times when Lorelai's like, oh, yeah, Paris. Like, so you know that they've talked about it, just not in the show. But it's like, just to have that conversation and be like, listen, you actually don't need to go to Chilton if that is the case. Like, she could have gone to Stars Hollow and been fine, but I think Lorelai was so stuck in her mindset of this is the future she should have that, like, Rory's emotional well-being was just so just all over the place.
I think
it was so bad.
I think there is a moment though where Lorelai does say, you don't have to go here.
Yeah, but it's when she's struggling, but it's when she's struggling. Rory goes, oh, so you don't believe it.
Yes, exactly. And so then I was gonna say, like, that's kind of a manipulation almost in the timing of when she's asking that question, because Rory is then seeing it as, oh, you don't believe in me being able to do this.
Yes.
So I'm going to prove you wrong.
So then, yes, exactly.
She has that defiant spirit as well.
Yes, the same as Lorelai. Yeah. And so it's like, how much of that was actually caring for Rory versus spurring her on. Yeah. I don't know. But
I just think that Lorelai is so hot and cold with like being mom and being like
best friend.
Yes. And so it's hard to say, like, when she even told her, like, you don't have to, who's to say that later on in the future it wouldn't have been, like, Rory would be so hard on herself for, like, Chilton or whatever, and then her mom may be using, I don't know, it's so hard to know with, like, what could have happened if things had been differently. I just think she didn't do enough to help Rory through that time. It was very much, like, with Max and with her parents and, like, Rory getting into Harvard, but there just wasn't enough of her mom being there for her through the Tristan and the Paris times. Like, they weren't talking about it enough. We saw Rory going through it, but not her mom being there for her. It was kind of just, like, her mom being like, oh, yeah, Paris is the worst. Like, you know, kind of, like, egging her on.
And just agreeing with it.
Yes.
Instead and of not, offering, like, wisdom and insight.
Yes. And to be like, here's how you could deal with it. Instead of, like, well, I dropped out. I didn't finish high school, so I don't know. It's like, you still could be there for her more.
Yeah, and I think this kind of ties into, we were we briefly talked about this in the last episode, but when she meets Chris's parents, so her other grandparents, and that whole scene, like, both of them as parents, they are not there for their daughter. Yeah. Like, they're being very selfish. They are holding on to that, and they're not prepping their daughter, saying, hey, like, they just don't listen to what they say. Like, you know, they could have said that, but, like, instead they're just like, oh, we'll see how this goes. Like, they're setting it up to be a blow up. Yeah. Instead of helping to diffuse the situation, instead of helping to offer peace to their daughter. Yeah. Like, they're both 16 and they're not offering any wisdom of what they've learned of how to deal with those things. Right. And Rory's just often left on her own, which I think then is why she is the way that she is.
They're being very reactive and not proactive. Yes. And I think in parenting, you really see the differences between, you know, like, had they taken that time to prepare Rory for what might have happened in that scenario with her meeting her other grandparents, it would have probably felt a lot different for Rory. Like, it might not have changed the outcome of the event, but how it affected Rory would have been different, right? Yeah. And honestly, okay, there's this one part that I want to talk to you guys about, because there is a moment, and this is kind of along that reactive idea. So obviously Lorelai got pregnant at 16, so she was very young. There's a moment where, and Rory's like, yes, she's dating Dean, but I don't think Rory comes off as the type to, like, you know, especially knowing her mom's situation. Yeah. She always gives the vibe that she wants to be responsible, right? Yeah. And so there's this moment where she goes out with Dean late, and Emily happens to go over to Lorelai's house that night. And Lorelai has, like, a spasm in her back or something, so Emily stays the night to help her. And which is a very interesting thing, because that doesn't really ever happen before, so it's a weird dynamic for them already. But then that night, Rory is out with Dean late. They go to Miss Patty's. She has this music studio in Gilmore Girls, and they fall asleep reading together. They're not even doing anything promiscuous, but then Miss Patty finds them in the morning at, like, you know, like 6 a.m. or something, 5:30 in the morning. And then they go back to Lorelai's, like, Rory goes back and runs home and is freaking out. Like, she's like, oh no, this is awful. And Emily kind of loses it because it's reminding Emily of her own trauma with Lorelai, right? Yeah. And then Lorelai defends Rory until Emily leaves. Yeah. And then she blows up at Rory. Yeah. And kind of just, honestly, really trashes her, saying, like, you should have been more responsible. I'm getting you on the pill. Yes. Like yelling at her, like, that's it. This is the line. And all of the stuff she said to Emily was valid. Like, I know my daughter. This isn't her. There's probably an explanation. And all of that goes out the window the second that Emily is gone. And Rory, it's like one of her few really great moments. Yes. Where she calls her out on it and says, are you just reacting like this because your mom was here? Yeah. Because why are you treating me this way?
Because you got caught or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Because this reflects badly on you. Yes. Yeah. And I kind of want to hear you guys' thoughts on that, because that is a very interesting moment.
Yeah. And I think for both of them, they are... Yes, Millie. Millie does not like that.
No, she doesn't like it either.
Yes, well said. I think for both of them, they are people pleasers in the sense that they have certain ways that they want to come across. And so Lorelai, to her parents, she's constantly trying to prove that she is not that 16-year-old girl. But she is still. She does not. Yeah, she doesn't do a good job of proving them. But she wants to try to prove that she has a good life. Yeah. She can take care of herself, even with her job, and, like, mentioning she's running an inn. Like, she says that so many times. I'm running an inn. Like, you know, and she's a businesswoman or whatever. But I think also when it comes to her daughter, she wants to prove that she knows her daughter. She wants to prove that they have a good relationship compared to what she and Emily did. Yeah. And there's constantly that trying to prove something.
Yes. Proving she's more responsible of a mom than Emily, because her daughter wouldn't go out and, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there is this sense of, you know, reacting when that doesn't go as planned, or you know, when she has these expectations of Rory and Rory doesn't necessarily meet them, or it doesn't happen in the way that she wants it to. She reacts. And well,
and I think also kind of coming back to that night with like his parents, Chris's parents, and what you said about the reacting, because who goes to Rory that night? It's Emily.
Yeah.
And what do Lorelai and Chris do? They go to the balcony.
Yes.
And she doesn't...
I forgot about that,
Yeah, she doesn't talk to Rory about what happened until the next morning.
Yeah.
And that to me is just like, go find your daughter.
Yeah, and
like,
they were being
in that
reactive in the moment, like her and Christopher.
Yes, it's like they totally forgot about
their daughter.
Rory. They're in this moment and they're like...
thrown back to being 16 and running away from the conversation.
Exactly, instead of like actually thinking it through and being like, wow, how would that have been for Rory to be in this position of like, yes, this is something that we did, but how would that feel being her hearing all of the stuff that was ruined because of her? And like realistically, it's obviously not on Rory. And so for her to feel that way, it's like, yes, valid, but also like, you were a baby. Like you didn't do anything. But for mom to not even, or her dad, to not even go. But I feel like it's expected more for Lorelai only because Chris is very absent and like, yes, he should have, but you expect it more. Yeah. And so it's just upsetting that like they chose to go and do that instead of being with Rory in that moment. But it's Emily who goes and thinks about Rory and goes over to her and, you know.
And in some ways, like, I think this reactive behavior, I think that it does go back to then even Emily and Richard and their parents, right? Yeah. Because, like, you think of how that scene is when they flash back to them getting the news. Oh, maybe it happens in the beginning of season 2.
I think it's later. The flashbacks on like what happens when.
Oh yeah, no, that's.
I think it's beginning of season 2, but
not that you can.
But yeah.
Like no, actually we're not. We're talking season 1.
But they like, you know, seeing those reactions, like Emily and Richard reacted because this is something that's very publicly going to become. Or it's going to become obvious to
and it's
society.
going to reflect badly on them as
and
people.
Then Emily is hearing that they were caught and that Miss Patty found them. So then she's making that connection of like society or the community has seen your daughter doing this.
Yes.
And it doesn't, like, for her, I think for Emily, it's like, it doesn't matter what the outcome was or what your daughter says happened. It's the fact that community saw you. That is what's more important. Yeah. Whereas for Lorelai,
look.
Yes. From the outside. Whereas for Lorelai, she's trying to get it to be, well, what actually happened? Give me the facts.
Yeah.
But then because of her mom reacting that way, then she has to react that way. Yeah. And she kind of, it's like this domino effect.
Right. Yeah. Right. And also just, like, I'm not a mom, obviously, but I can imagine that would be really hard with your daughter. She got pregnant at 16 and ran away. And then to not really be in your daughter's life for 16 years. And then also your granddaughter then goes and does it. It's kind of like, I tried so hard and to know that it's still repeating itself. Like, that would be hard as a mom to kind of feel that this is also my granddaughter and its history is repeating itself and I tried so hard to, you know, and so there is also that emotional side to it where, like, yes, it looks bad on their family for society to be like, oh, wow,
the
they
reputation.
Can't. But also as a mom, it would be like, I tried so hard and it's just, you know, like that would be a lot.
Well, and I think too, like there is some truth even in real life to the fact that there's these patterns in families that kind of end up happening, right? Yeah. And that's one of them for them, right? Yeah. Like, and so when that moment happens for Emily, like that has to have been triggering for
both of them. Yeah.
But in very different ways, right? For Lorelai, it's triggering because she's like, I know how my mom responded to me when this happened, and I'm trying to protect my daughter from that, even though I'm gonna give her my peace of mind as soon as my mom leaves. But then for Emily, it's like, this is happening all over again. Like, what did my family do to have this ruin come upon us?
Yeah.
Right?
Like, yeah. Oh man. Yeah. It's hard with those dynamics, and it gets even more in season 2. Yeah. I think we should talk about some of the friendships because there's some things to talk about with there too.
We're going long again.
Sorry guys, but hey, maybe I can't even believe that it's almost been an hour. But I know. But hopefully you guys feel the same too. But let's talk about those friendships because I think as much as the family dynamics are huge, it does play a big part into then their friendships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think probably the main ones in season 1 are Rory and Lane. Yeah. And Sookie and Lorelai.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
And I think honestly, I love both of those friendships, but in a lot of ways, they sometimes feel one-sided.
They do.
Yes, 100%.
I wrote that down.
Yeah.
I felt the same way.
Yeah.
And I think especially with Rory and Lane, we don't see Rory and Lane's friendship prior to Dean, because Dean comes up
right
in the beginning.
Away. Yeah.
So I would love to see like a spin-off of both of these friendships, like of just Lorelai. Cut that out.
Lori.
I would love to see like a spin-off of Lorelai and Sookie and how they met and how their friendship, was throughout the years. And then same with Rory and Lane, because you don't really get to see it, but I have a feeling that like Dean changes a lot of things, because Rory then does become so self-centered with that relationship and with Chilton that she's not there for Lane. No. Like she's never asking. And poor Lane, like
Lane's such a good friend despite it.
She is.
Yep.
She's always there for
always
Rory.
there.
Even despite the fact that her mom is super strict. She still shows up for Rory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their styles and everything are so different as friends.
Yeah.
But like they still, like Lane still has this heart for Rory and understands her.
Yeah.
And it really feels like Rory doesn't take the time to understand her friend.
Because I think in her mind, her world revolves around herself, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, yes, you're relevant and I like you and I'm including you in my circle, but that's
welcome.
You should feel honored.
Yeah, you're lucky.
I'm including you.
You're
in life.
lucky to be here. Yeah,
well, and I think it says a lot about the kind of friend you are. If as soon as a boy comes in, you're just completely off it. Like that. Just I am so happy that Lane was the kind of friend that she was, because she was a very good friend.
Yeah.
And I just thought that Rory, 1 out of 10 friend. Like, there were some moments here and there. But, even, for example, when Lane wanted to go on that date with Dean's friend.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, I just don't know him. That to me, she seemed a little bit, hesitant, even though she did eventually talk with Dean and, they did go on a date.
Yeah.
At first, she was kind of almost as if a part of her didn't, and this is just kind of me saying it, but it felt like she didn't want Lane to have another man, because she wanted to be about her.
She wanted to be the only one dating.
Yes, and it so many examples, when they're walking around and Rory's trying to find her textbook at the inn or whatever, and Lane's trying to talk to her, and it wasn't until she found it that she's like, sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah.
And it's so many times where she didn't ever pick up on what Lane was trying to say until it was convenient for Rory. And even then it was she was only half there.
Yeah.
And it was just so frustrating to watch, because Lane just in general deserved better in the whole show.
Yes.
She deserves so much more. And I just think her the way that Rory treated her is kind of interesting, because Lorelai and Sookie, even though they were a little bit one-sided, their friendship was still pretty good. It still felt more equal than Rory and Lane. So it's interesting to see how Rory was treating Lane when she didn't really have a bad example with her mom and her friends. They are still pretty close, and so to see how much, but also that could be the pressures that she was feeling, she just didn't have time to. But
I wonder too if for Lorelai and Sookie, they're doing the same job, and I think that plays a part where
that's true.
Rory and Lane, they're still so young that they're going completely different directions, right?
And they're no longer at the same school.
So and when you're younger, that really does play a part in where your friendships go, because it's hard to stay in contact with somebody who is doing a very, very different job or a very different direction in life, right?
And actually, in the length of the show, Rory ends up getting closer to Paris.
Yes.
Which is so funny, because season 1, they're so at odds. And hot and cold in their friendship, too, because there's moments where Paris just hates Rory, and then moments where she's like, you're okay. And then you're what is happening
I actually think that they're kind of the best friendship to have, because they're both selfish in their own way.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah, because then for Lane, there's so many times where Lane is gypped in that relationship, whereas with Paris and Rory, it's a little more equal.
It's whatever. You're both putting in the same amount of effort.
Yeah.
You both hate each other, but also tolerate each other.
Yeah.
So in
and
some
you're going
ways,
similar ways, so you can kind of encourage each other in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they're very similar, similar in like kind of in how they think. I don't know. I think that they're kind of a good friendship pairing.
Yeah, we can talk about that probably later.
Yeah.
When we talk about the seasons, but
yeah, I think that there are moments where Lorelai just has a little bit more wisdom in the friendship with Sookie, where she's able to
it's more reciprocal. Like they're both putting into that.
Yes.
And she's able to recognize when she's not and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like,
that's where I actually think this is interesting, because I think we've talked about how emotionally immature Lorelai is throughout the show, but I think it's specifically in the dynamic with her family.
Yes.
Whereas I think in her friendships, like, she's a 32-year-old woman. She's got a good career, right? I think she's a lot more solid in who she is and how she acts around the people she works with.
Yes.
And around some of those adult friendships, because she actually has more to give in those friendships. I don't know if that...
And if you think about it, she was 16 when she showed up at that inn.
Yeah.
She had to be more mature. She had to be on the upper end because she's working with adults.
Yeah.
So I think she kind of forced herself to grow up in her career side of her life.
Yeah, and she maybe didn't have the best influence through motherhood, right? But she had really great influences in her career and her friendships.
Well, and even with the owner of the inn, who we don't see for a while, but we know that that was kind of her mother figure, but that was also through work and through friendships. So I think for that, like, she grew up with friends more than she grew up with her family. So it makes sense for her to be more immature on the family side, but like friendships, she has years with these people currently and not years in the past and then kind of distant through those important years of her life. But I just think like, Lane just was so much better for Rory than Rory was for Lane, which obviously we know, but like, I think Lane stuck around because her mom was so strict, she didn't really have a choice in who she spent her time with. And so.
Well, and I think... funny enough, I think that Lorelai, in some ways, was a better parent figure to Lane than she was to Rory in some ways. Like, you think of, like, even how Lorelai talks to Lane when, you know, her and Max, like, are there and Lane and Rory end up in a fight and she's at their house waiting for Rory to talk to, but she ends up talking to Lorelai. Even how Lorelai talks to her or what she says... We don't always see that with her and Rory, but I feel like she kind of she could relate to Lane in so many different ways because of the strict parenting. And so I think she knew exactly what to say to Lane that
she was almost a better mom to Lane.
Yes,
she was.
I think so. I think so. Like, I think she had that better relationship.
Right. Well, I think because Lane was on a more normal path and she didn't have to force or like put her on this one track. She was like, this other mom is kind of raising her in this way. And it's kind of like, her mom was so much more extreme than Emily was, honestly. But that kind of made it, So instead of her having to be so free and do whatever you want, she was kind of like, just get through it in this way. Like, it was strict in different levels. But I also get confused because there was that scene where Lorelai didn't want to lie to Lane's mom. She was like, I will always tell the truth. But then it's like the next episode where Lane's lying about the concert, and then Rory tells her that she told the truth, and she's like, oh, Lane! And it's kind of like, it's weird that Lorelai in one scene was like, I don't want to lie to mom, but then the next time she's like, oh, why did she tell her mom the truth? Like, it's, and I do think that comes from her battling that best friend mom thing. But,
well, and that's when, like, Rory's around, too, so maybe that makes a difference. But I wonder, too, if part of why Lorelai can show up for Lane in that way is because she knows that no one's gonna reflect, it's not gonna reflect poorly on her.
That's true.
If something happens with Lane, right? And so I think she has that constant pressure from her parents to be a good parent. Whereas with Lane, it's just like,
she's just a kid.
She's just a kid, and I'm gonna just help her because there's no other pressures here. Like, I'm seeing this need and I'm gonna fill it, right? Whereas I think with Rory, it was so much more complex in her mind, right? It maybe shouldn't have been, but it was.
I think her maternal instincts kicked in more with Lane than it did with Rory because she wanted to be Rory's best friend because that's not the relationship she had. But then because she is a mother and she is like 32 and, you know, those instincts kicked in more with Lane
Yeah.
in comparison to Rory, obviously. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like with her mothering Rory, I think there was just always that like voice, right?
Yeah.
There, and it was so hard to separate because with Lane there wouldn't have been that, but with Rory there was always just this like, what would Emily Gilmore say about this, right?
She's constantly being watched.
And that's where I think she's also fighting against that, like, I don't want to have a relationship with my daughter that I had with my mother, so I'm going to go so far the other way and be her friend, right? Yeah. Okay, we're kind of running low on time here.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask one more question. So if you had to play a character in Gilmore Girls, who would you be? Who do you relate most to in the Gilmore Girls world?
Oh man.
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm making you think here, but
I don't know.
That is a really good one to ask too.
Yeah. I feel like Sookie.
yeah.
I mean, I like to say, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this. But I like to say that I try to keep more of like a positive vibe and like try to have the positive outlook on life. And I think that Sookie has that too. So I don't know, I'd say Sookie. But I guess I am a little bit clumsy too. So Sookie's very clumsy. So maybe I am more like Sookie. I don't know.
Oh, I still have to think about this.
I honestly don't know. I would say Sookie, but I don't think I'm bubbly enough to be Sookie. I'm not that positive. I am, but I'm not.
You're Michelle. No.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that. I was like, I probably relate a little bit more to Michelle, but
On me.
yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. It's hard to say because I feel like, yes, Sookie, because she's very like happy. I don't think that I'm that happy, but like, I don't know. It's kind of hard because I feel like all of them, like, there's certain pieces from each of them. But
Would you be the harp player?
yeah, that's
my
what I said, drill or whatever. Yeah, honestly,
No, I'm
Kirk.
just kidding.
Yeah, Kirk, probably Kirk. Maybe like, I don't know, Babette or Patsy maybe.
Oh, yes,
I feel like those two, like, we don't really see a lot of them, but like,
Man, but they're in every episode
they
too.
are.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love those side characters.
yeah, I definitely wouldn't be any of them.
Yeah.
Like the main
Yeah.
characters, and like, I love Lane, but like, I didn't grow up with like a very strict, so I
Yeah.
think my experience, but yeah, probably one of the side ones.
Yeah.
The comedic relief for sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Man.
that's great.
I just remember, I'll say this one last thing, but I remember in college is when I was watching the show. So like this came out and I remember my mom watching it, but I wasn't old enough to watch it yet. Because I was I was still pretty young. But anyways, in college I started watching it, and I remember talking with some friends in college, and one of the guys there was just like, that show is so toxic. Like, it has such toxic relationships. And I remember being like, no, it doesn't. Like, and just like so sassy right back, being like, no, this show is awesome. Like, it's great. And then now as we're talking about it, I'm like, there's lots of toxic relationships in it. Or like just lots of red flags. Like, it's still, I love this show so much, but it's funny when you really take a deep dive into it and you're just like, oh boy, there's a lot of things going on.
Maybe I'd be Max, actually. He's the most normal one. Yeah, maybe I'd be Max.
Yeah. Nice and steady.
Yeah.
Just be normal. Because everybody in the town, like this whole town is just so quirky.
Yeah.
Like,
I think
there's
that's
just so
what I
many
loved
things.
so much about watching it is that you have this whole town that's so like welcoming, and they love each other, and everybody knows each other, and so you feel so like safe in it. And no matter how much we like dog on some of the characters, it's like they have so many good moments too, where like you're watching it, and it's only when you dissect it that you're kind of like, oh, this is toxic. But when you're just watching it for what it is, you're kind of like, oh, this is so fun. And and the show has to be the way that it is in order for it to continue on. Yeah, exactly. And so you can't help but be like, if this was real life, it would not go down this way. It would not be as intense. But I mean, maybe somebody out there is living Gilmore Girls. I don't know. But it just there would be moments where like you could prevent certain things from happening. But it is a really good show.
There's just something so like familiar about it. So when you watch it, you just it feels like a warm hug.
It does,
right? Yes. You're just watching it, and you hear the intro music, and you go like, oh, I'm home.
Yes, exactly. I was just gonna say it feels like home. Which is just, it's funny. I love the show.
Yeah.
I think I watched it so much that now I'm like, I can't watch it as much. But I do love it. It's definitely one of the most rewatched shows that I've watched.
Too.
Yeah.
I think we've already talked about red flags. Like last episode, we shared our red flag characters. I feel like in the family dynamic and in the friendships, we've kind of shared too. Like Rory and Lorelai are probably the red flags in their friendships as well. Rory mostly. But she's also very young. But I feel like everyone has their moments within the family dynamic, especially, so we probably don't have to touch on that again.
I feel like everything makes sense for them to be the way that they are. They all play a role in it, and so like you were saying, it just makes sense for them to have these red flags. So
well, and okay, so fave of the week, it's the same day as for us part one. But can we think of another fave of the week?
I have one.
You have one?
I have one. Sarah. You're going to laugh at this.
I'm going to laugh?
I think so. Okay. Probably. Maybe. Or you're going to be like, oh boy. Okay. I found this Instagram account. And this is my favorite of the week.
I know what you're going to talk about.
Okay. Go look it on Instagram. It's called Rolling Chapters. Okay. It just like satisfies something in me of this like this person that made this mobile bookstore. And it is so cute. I don't know how I found it, like just randomly on Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram knows me. But I found this account and now I can't stop looking at like these I don't know, mobile bookstores or whatever. And it's like, they just take this little trailer with bookshelves and stuff. And so I'm pitching that becomes our new job.
Well, and Sarah literally texted me, I was like, check your Instagram. And so I go and I watch it and I'm like, so we're buying a trailer? And she was like, I've been looking on Facebook Marketplace.
Yes. Okay. But there's just something so satisfying about this Instagram page. Like, just go look at it because it's so cute and it can go anywhere. And I'm like, man, I think we need a mobile bookstore, guys.
Let's do it.
I think, do you want to join us on this?
Sure, Sure.
Drive it. Anyways, so that's been the fave of my week because now my Instagram is just full of all of these little bookstores, and
that's so funny.
That's my fave. Han, what's your fave?
You shared a craft one, so I'll also share a craft one, but every week my mom and my sisters and I, we do like a coloring night where we have like these books and we'll color them. And recently we've been doing paint by numbers also, so probably that right now. So shout out to my family.
Yeah.
Hi guys. I made it big.
I'm on a podcast. Oh my goodness.
But probably that.
Okay, my fave of the week, I don't know if this counts, but I got so excited today because there's this show I really liked. They only had one season. It's called Paradise on Disney+. I love that show.
Yes.
It's so good. I just saw today that season 2 is coming out
You didn't know
week.
that?
I had no idea they were even making a season 2.
I have been waiting.
I saw the trailer for it today and I was like, this is the best day ever. So that's my fave of the week.
No.
It's just a trailer for a new season of Paradise, but still.
Paradise is a trailer.
Yeah, it's the trailer. Not even the show yet.
Not even the show. But soon.
Yes, next week.
I know. And I've been rewatching, I binged it. Because there's only 8 episodes.
I know. We're going to rewatch it now that we know there's another season. Yeah, my husband didn't know either. He was, so I told him about it. He was like, what? And we had this moment where we were like,
I know. And so fast.
No, I haven't. Maybe we should.
Oh, you should watch it.
I've been telling you and Michael to watch it.
Paradise?
Yes. I think you guys did watch Paradise.
What's it about?
It was the guy from
We'll
This
talk
Is
about
Us.
it. Yeah.
But This Is Us. Anyway,
we'll talk about it. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure Michael said that you guys watched it.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Anyways. Paradise is coming out.
Watch
crafting and mobile bookstores.
Yes. Those are our faves of the week.
Yeah.
Let us know yours in the comments.
Yes.
And let us know your thoughts, too, on the Gilmore Girls family dynamics and friendships. Because we'd be curious to know if you agree with our thoughts or not.
Yeah.
We're open to discussion. But we are right. No.
We are.
But at the end of the day,
we are very
we do have the
passionate
power to
about
turn off the
this.
comments.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Choose your battles.
Do you see these notebooks?
Yeah.
We've got lots of
We
research.
have studied.
Yes.
No. Anyways, thanks for listening.
Yes.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode.
Please like, share, and subscribe, and feel free to leave us a review.
Share your comments on today's episode.